I do want to take, just 2 minutes to do a quick icebreaker. I feel like it's always nice to maybe start with something really easy, really fun. And so what you'll probably see on the screen here is our first icebreaker, our only icebreaker actually. So pretend that you're starting a new business. I would love for people to answer in the chat, who would they pick as their business partner? And we'll just do this for 2 minutes. So we'll stop at the O5. I see Oprah, a lot of Oprahs. Leslie Knope. A lot of Leslie Knopes and Oprahs. One Walter White. Michael Scott, of course. Man, I was trying to make this a difficult decision, but it seems like it's a huge lead by either Oprah or Leslie. All right, one more minute. A lot of other suggestions in here as well. Elon Musk would be amazing. Who is Walter White? Walter White is from Breaking Bad. He is the main character in Breaking Bad. He plays a chemistry teacher who ends up dealing meth. It's very interesting. All right, Rick and Morty. All right, so thank you for entertaining me and going through that exercise. I think that was really cool. Interesting how no one picked Tina or Smudge Lord, which I don't know if you guys know, but Smudge Lord is the cat from that meme where the woman yells at the cat. No one, I think maybe one person picked Phoebe, no one picked Tiger King. So you're all very logical, rationally sound people. So I'm glad to know. So let's dive straight in for what you're all here for. The title of today's workshop is Career by Design, and just kind of give an overview into what that means. I really do truly believe that everyone owns their own career and that everyone has the ability to shape it better than anyone else. So whether that means you're succeeding at your current company, looking for your next big opportunity, or founding your own company, you can always be intentional about the way that you grow so that your trajectory takes you where you want. So that's really going to be the focus of today. And just a little bit about me. I know Sana just introduced me, so I am a product designer by day. But in my spare time, I've always been really intrigued by the idea of career education. Basically, how to structure success in your job search, how to grow within your company, and how to achieve overall fulfillment in your career. And towards that end, like Felix mentioned, I've been a mentor at ADP List, but I've also been a mentor for the past 4 years. I worked on HR software for 2 of those years, where I interviewed a lot of recruiters and job seekers to really understand both of those points of view. I've also hired and helped grow teams across 3 different companies. And then a month ago, just a self plug, I also started writing a newsletter on how to build a career in product design, and we just crossed 1,000 subscribers. So that's really cool. So I'm really, really interested in this topic. That is basically the crux of what I'm trying to tell you. So first things first, I do want to hear from all of you in the chat. What is career growth to you? How do you define career growth? This can be super specific to your role or your industry, or it can be a super generic definition around how we progress throughout our career. I just want to take a peek at how we look at career growth today. Shauna saying, becoming an expert at what you do. That's a great definition. Talia saying, continuing to advance and learn. Eleanor, every year, every quarter, learn something new, achieve something new. Absolutely. Let's see. Having broader impact, living closer to your values over time. That's a really good one. Learning to, oops, sorry, they're popping up so fast. Feeling committed to a shared vision. Never stop learning. Yep, these are all really, really good. Seeing when you're stunted and might need to pivot. Amazing. So you guys all basically grasp the overall concept. I don't think that I need to, um, really blow your mind here, but I do want to kind of start from one single definition for today, just so that we can all work from the same starting point. And the definition that I really want to throw out there is career growth is closing the gap between what I'm good at and what I want. And the reason why I really like this definition is because number one, it is universal to any role, doesn't matter what you do. Number two, it implies a continuous action taken over time. This isn't a one and done kind of thing because your skills change over time and your goals change over time. And so how you close that gap will also change according to how those change. We naturally grow as individuals, and it's really important to acknowledge that change and take the next step to support that change. So, closing the gap is what I perceive to be kind of a continuous effort. And then thirdly, I really like this definition because it also carries a pretty strong sense of intentionality behind it. You're ultimately acting upon two major factors about yourself, meaning that you have a say in what every next step looks like. Every next step is based off of what you're good at and what you want, not what happens around you. So just to kind of break it down a little bit more, those two things I just mentioned, like I said, though that gap can fluctuate over time. You might pick up a new valuable skill that you realize you can market, or you realize that you want to make a career move that's more lateral, right? And so the goal today out of this workshop isn't to define, for yourself each of these and then carve that into stone so that you now have like these two lists that you carry with you for the rest of your career. Like I mentioned, it's going to change, but today is really more about how to make that list so that you can adjust that list going forward. And so the goal today is to try out a framework of how to think about these two things and then how to apply them to your career over time. So how do we do that? I'm going to throw out a buzzword that we've all heard of, I'm sure. Self-awareness is such a popular statement when it comes to career development. But despite how popular it is, I do think that it's something that remains somewhat underestimated. I feel like very rarely do we ever recognize it as this explicit skill to hone as part of our career growth. But studies do show that self-awareness in people result in higher confidence, higher creativity. You come out as a better leader, and you also get more promotions. And these are academic studies, so it is proven. So it is an extremely valuable skill. And according to Tasha Urich, who is, I don't know if you know her, but she's basically the godmother of self-awareness research. Self-awareness to her is defined as the will and the skill to understand who we are, including things like our values, our feelings, behaviors, strengths, weaknesses, and impact on others. And so other ways that you can think about self-awareness can be emotional intelligence, empathy, influence, persuasion, communication, collaboration, all of those things, but they actually all stem from self-awareness. Self-awareness is kind of like the underlying foundation for those things. And if you can think about it another way, the way that I personally like thinking about it, self-awareness sets the upper limit for the skills that make us successful. So maybe think about that for a second. Basically, how self-aware you are is kind of the ceiling of where you can go. So the higher self-awareness you can get, the higher you can go. And the two ways that people can apply self-awareness are internal versus external. I think that these are probably pretty, logical to you guys, but just to explain it, internal self-awareness is basically how clearly we can understand ourselves. And then external self-awareness is basically how we understand others' perception of us. And these can also be broken up into a grid like this. You can be a combination of those two things. So depending on where you are in terms of internal and external self-awareness, you basically land on one of these four quadrants. You can either be an introspector, a seeker, a pleaser, or you can just simply be really aware. It does bother me that aware is the only adjective here out of all the nouns that we get. But this is again coming from Tasha Urich's study, so I don't want to mess with her work. So yes, these are the 4 quadrants that you can find yourself falling into. And just to kind of define them a little bit, if you are a seeker, that means that you have low internal and low external self-awareness. You may not know who you are yet, what you stand for, how others see you. And as a result, you may find yourself stuck or frustrated with your performance and relationships. If you are a introspector, you're high on internal, low on external. So you're clear about who you are, but you don't really challenge your own views or search for blind spots by getting feedback from others. And this can also hurt your relationships and limit your success. If you are a pleaser, you have low internal and high external self-awareness. So while you're more likely to be empathetic, you can be focused on appearing a certain way to others that you overlook your own values and priorities. So over time, you might make choices that don't really honor your own values and don't really service your own success or fulfillment. So these are the 3 that we've gone over. And then very lastly, I'm sure you all uh, know already, aware is basically high internal and high external. So you know who you are, you know what you want to accomplish, and you seek out and value other people's opinions. These people truly do set up the most successful feedback loops I've ever seen. And these are definitely people to admire. So I would love to hear from all of you in the chat, out of these 4, which one do you think feels like you? Let's see, everyone's saying seeker, pleasers, introspectors. Can I share the pleaser slide again? Yes, of course. Let's see, pleaser slide. Introspectors, pleasers, introspectors, a lot of pleasers and introspectors, okay? It does change from time to time, of course. I totally agree with that. This is definitely not a permanent assignment by any means. I have certainly wavered between pleaser and introspector myself. Pleaser, someone said aware, it's awesome. Awesome, amazing. Okay, so I myself do lean towards introspector naturally. If I don't really work on it too much, I do lean and default to introspector. And what that does mean is that I try to be extra conscious of how I might spin my wheel inside my own head. And I try my best to look towards feedback from others in order to check myself. So as we go through today's exercises, if you do identify as an introspector, there may be moments for you to reflect on whether your assumptions about yourself is explicitly confirmed by other people. Are these assumptions only coming from yourself? And it will be important for you to be truthful about that so that you can build an intentional and specific feedback loop to verify its accuracy. And if you land a little bit more on the pleaser spectrum, you might want to consider doing the opposite. Pleasers can sometimes project how others value them onto how they value themselves. So you might benefit as we go through these exercises again, having a second look into where these values are coming from and kind of give yourself the safe space today to think about what you would answer if you didn't have those external influences. We're going to go through a bunch of prompts, but I would love for you to answer them as if you're free of obligations or expectations. And then finally, if you are a seeker, no worries. You have the freedom to actually do a lot of exploration. You don't have any biases to hold you back, meaning that you have fewer misconceptions to unlearn. And trust me, unlearning is a very difficult process. But as a starting point, you should probably observe and find some patterns in your actions and feelings. So again, as you go through the prompts today, see if you can notice any themes bubble up and kind of use those as a sounding board for both yourself and the others around you. And then of course, I did leave out aware, but if you are aware, you're basically set up to go through today's exercises with extreme clarity. But maybe you just need a way to frame your understanding of yourself. But one thing that I do want, people who identify as aware and probably everyone to be aware of is that while a lot of people believe that they are self-aware, only about 10 to 15% of people actually fit in that criteria. There's a huge myth that's been debunked, which is experience and age factor into being more self aware. But research shows that if anything, it has a negative correlation to being self aware. There was a study of like 3,600 leaders across various roles and industries. And when compared to lower level leaders, the higher level leaders more significantly overvalue their own skills when compared to other perceptions of them. And this can be due to a lot of different things, but some theories are they have fewer people above them from whom to get objective feedback. And they also may have a higher reluctance to listen to feedback given their existing success. So, regardless of which one you identify, it never hurts to set up processes to check yourself every now and then. And despite this 10 to 15% percentage, the good news is that self-awareness is actually one of the most developable skills. Literally, anyone can do it with the right tools and the right mindset because self-awareness has not been found to be correlated to any demographic or any characteristic. So hopefully with that in mind, let's dive straight in. All right, what I want. So basically, as you remember, what I want is one of the two things to understand about ourselves if we want to make intentional career growth. It's comprised of our values, our missions, and our priorities. And in the following exercise, let's basically isolate this part of ourselves and kind of forget about the things that we're good at. In fact, the exercise will really only work if you forget that part because measuring the difference is kind of the whole point of today's workshop. So grab a pen, a paper, or open a new document on your computer. We're basically going to go through this exercise to help drill to the core of why we want certain things and help define our values. If you've ever read the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of those habits is to start with the end in mind. So let's start by visualizing yourself in your dream job. Basically, who you would be in that job and what will we get to do in that job. And this job can be a role that exists in your industry today or something that you're creating for yourself. Basically, what I would love for you to do, either in your document or on a piece of paper, is to write 3 bullet points describing yourself in that dream job. And I do have some examples on here in case you would like help getting started. So, some examples I have are I can work from anywhere in the world. I work on something that people love and want to buy, or I manage a large team successfully. So let's take 2 minutes to go through that. So until, oh, actually we just hit the 24. So let's actually give us the full 2 minutes. So the 26 mark. And if you are done, I would love for you to put in the chat done, just so that I don't cut you off too early. All right. I think a bunch of people have said done. Tons and tons of people. Okay. If you're not done, that's totally fine. We'll have extra time later for maybe you to catch up. But let's move on really quickly. For the very first item in your bullet list, ask yourself, why is this important to me? And write down the answer to that. And then ask yourself the same question to that answer. So, an example for me might be I want to work from anywhere in the world. Why is that important to me? It would be great if I can see the world without giving up my job. Why is that important to me? I don't want to travel only once a year or after I retire. Why is that important to me? I'm afraid of missing out on life when I'm older, and I want to make the most of my youth. So basically, ask yourself that question 3 times, and you should end up with 4 lines. First line is basically the item that you came up with, and then 3 sequential lines after that. If you think of more than 3 things, absolutely feel free to put those down. I've just limited to 3 for the sake of time, but absolutely feel free to do more than 3. All right, same deal. If you're done, put in the chat done so I don't end too early. And everyone who are done, just to make sure you're doing this for all 3. Oops, I've advanced the slide. Make sure to do this for all 3 of your items. So you're asking yourself, why is this important to me 3 times for all of your items? Okay, last minute to wrap up. Actually, not even a full minute, last couple seconds to wrap up. And if you do run out of time, you're obviously free to do this in your free time. All right. So, what you should end up with at the bottom of all of your items is basically, the closest to the core reason of why you want certain things. And what I kind of am showing you on the screen now is an example of what values might look like. These are basically the basic human values as defined by Shalom H. Schwartz. There's supposed to be 10 of them, but I've actually condensed a couple just because they were really similar. And underneath each of them is an example of how your career can reflect that value. So, for example, if you value self-direction, you may found your own company, or you might seek high ownership in your work. If you value security, you might look for job security, job stability, and seek to be paid a good salary. If you value benevolence, this is basically doing good for the people around you. This is if you are the breadwinner, or you're choosing a job that is more convenient for your family, or to be near family. So these are basic values, shorts things we all can have and share. And feel free to see how the bottom of each of your lines map to those values. But I personally have struggled to map them completely one-to-one, so don't worry if you can't do it. But these are really great to keep in mind. So the reason why we do want to understand our values is because we basically want to use those values as a way to evaluate the opportunities ahead of us. So today, what we're doing is we're understanding our values, but later at the appropriate time, you're going to use those values to evaluate your opportunities. So for instance, if you value self-direction, maybe working at a large enterprise company may not give you the ability to have ownership over your work. Or for instance, if your value is security, working at an early stage startup may not be the greatest fit, because those do tend to come and go. And then if you value benevolence, if you again are at a startup, if you take equity over base salary, that may not be the best, because if you are the breadwinner, you need to be providing immediate financial value, and so that may not work with your value either. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that the next time you come across, crossroads or a number of paths in front of you, basically list all of those opportunities down. And with the values that you just came out of, rank those values by importance to you. So basically, I can say number one, self-direction, number two, universalism, whatever. Obviously, again, you don't have to use the values that I had put down by Schwartz. They can obviously be defined as you defined them yourself. But basically rank those values by importance. And then what you're going to do is quantitatively score each opportunity or each pathway based on your value. So say I have an opportunity to become a manager because I'm an IC right now. If I become a manager, does it satisfy my number one value of self-direction on a score of say 1 to 10? And then do the same thing for benevolence, do the same thing for another value and another value. And the reason why you're going to do this is because you're going to rank your opportunities by the most important value first. And so I'm going to rank the score that I've assigned to each opportunity by my most important value, which again, in this example, would be self-direction. And then if there are any ties within those opportunities, you're going to rank them by your second most important value, and so on and so forth. Ideally, you have enough opportunities that, breaking those ties, it provides a level of granularity. But if you don't, that's totally fine, because at the end of the day, while this is a more systematic approach, it's still up to you to consider those minor nuances and weigh those trade-offs. But it does really help to map those values to opportunities to help you compare to career choices that may otherwise seem so different from each other, because essentially you're converting them to the same unit of measurement. All right, on to the next one, what I'm good at. So what I'm good at is the other half of the definition we went over today. And what I'm good at is comprised of our skill sets, our traits, and our mindset. And this can be broken down into 5 different categories. This can be knowledge, which is basically what people usually associate skill sets with. And this is basically what you learn in school, what you learn on the job. Wisdom is basically how you apply that knowledge, but this is a little bit more future seeing. This is basically the ability to adapt to predicted changes and innovate how you apply that knowledge. And experience, on the other hand, is also a way of applying knowledge, but it's a little bit more past-based. So you're bringing this unique perspective based on the experiences that you gain in life. And this includes, the trials and errors that you learn from, and that's how you choose to apply that knowledge. Relevance is basically the ability to fulfill the needs of your industry and stay ahead of any changes. So an example is if you're a print designer, as things get more digital, maybe you should pick up skills as a digital designer and have, and kind of stay ahead of the curve that way. And then finally, communication is the ability to explain what you know and why it's important. So this is almost like marketing skills, the ability to have personal branding, the ability to convey your value proposition to clients, so on and so forth. And just like the last exercise, let's go through this one, irregardless of what we want. So here we're focusing on what we're good at and we're forgetting about what we want, because we want an objective look into your strengths, which will help ground the opportunities that you get. So let's move these one step at a time. And let's start with listing 5 of your biggest strengths. So I have some examples up here, like product strategy, time management, front end development. Those are more hard skills, but there's also soft skills like networking, communication will also be one of them. And then I also have remaining calm under pressure, because it's maybe a personality trait or mindset. So it can be any of those varieties. And, if you go back to those 5 categories, you can also try to derive from one of those 5. And I do highly recommend, when you do list your strengths, give them their own line and leave space to the right of them for the next couple steps. And just a heads up, if you do identify as a pleaser earlier on in the workshop, this may be a little bit of a difficult challenge for you, because you're a little bit lower on internal self-awareness. Try your best to let this come from within, and if it does help, just think of any 5 strengths or any 5 skills in general. We can always calibrate it later. And if you are done, let me know that you are done. Okay. I think we have a bunch of people saying they're done. A bunch of people also saying it is really hard from the pleaser point of view. I totally recognize that. Definitely had issues when I was building this workshop to make sure it was, a little bit fair to both sides. So you'll find the next couple of steps maybe a little bit easier for you. Okay, let's move on. So what we're going to do now is assess and score each of our strengths. So we have 5 strengths. We're going to give 5 scores. To start, it's likely that we pull these strengths from somewhere. So hopefully we have the evidence to support it. But just to double check, For each of your strengths, think about the examples you would use to support that strength. It can be a story, it can be something you've done in the past, an achievement, anything. If you have an example, if you don't have an example, put a zero next to that strength. If you have had an example that benefited yourself, put a one next to that strength. And then if it benefited others, put a two. If you have both one and two, just put a two. All right, that should have been really fast. So the reason why we want to do this is because we basically want to know how strong our strength is, which is a little bit of a meta thing to do. But basically, if you have examples, the more demonstratable that strength is. And if you have example that benefited others, either at home or at work, then you have more people to champion you to bolster your argument that this is true. So that's why this is important. So next, we're going to ask for each of your strengths again, whether it's been confirmed by others. So this is probably where it's really easy for pleasers and really hard for introspectors. This is basically asking yourself, has anyone ever hinted at this being your strength? If no one's ever addressed it in any way, put a zero next to that. If people have indirectly alluded to it, and you know what I mean, when people kind of, hint at you being really good at something, put a one. And then if someone has verbally, explicitly told you, hey, you are really good at this, put a two next to it. And yes, again, if you are both one and two, give yourself a two. Always take the higher number that you get. Yes, feedback from a non-professional setting is applicable. Ideally, you do start gaining some in the professional setting because you are applying it in a professional setting, but for the sake of this exercise, non-professional is fine. Will these slides be shared afterwards? Yep, totally fine to share these slides. Okay, that should have been a quick one as well. Okay, last one here. Is this strength translatable to other contexts? So you might think that usually when you evaluate strength, if you know it to be true and other people know it to be true, then it must be true. But there's also this third dimension of whether that strength is, relevant in other contexts. Because say you are really good, or say I'm really good at doing workshops, but I've only ever done them virtually. And other people who've attended them virtually say I'm really good at workshops, but I have massive stage fright, then that doesn't really mean that giving workshops is my strength. It means that giving virtual workshops is my strength. So you want to know kind of the scope of your strength here. So if you find yourself that the strength is really only applicable to a single role in a single industry, then give yourself a zero for that strength. And if you find that it's translatable to the same role, but in a different industry or in a different context in any other way, give it a one. And then if you find that it's translatable to any role in any industry, give yourself a two. All right. Final thing. So what you're going to do is take those three scores that you have next to all of your strengths, and I have ordered them in kind of the logical order of importance because very first thing you want to know is that you have evidence to support it. And then second thing to know is that, other people also agree with you. And then third thing to know is that it's a translatable skill. So in that order, rank your strengths according to that. So take the score you have in your first column down and give those a rank. For any for any that tie, rank them according to whether people have confirmed it, and for any that tie there, rank them according to whether it's translatable. Okay, someone's asking me to repeat that. So basically, for each of your strengths that you have, the five strengths that you have, next to them should be the number that you've scored it for. Can you support it? And so, based on the maximum value, put that at the top. Put the smallest values at the bottom. So, say strength number 3 has a full 2. I'm going to put that at the top. Some of them have a 0. Put that at the bottom. And then for any ones that tied, reorder them again within that set according to the score you gave it for the second evaluation, which is have other people confirmed it and break those ties, and then break a tie again with the last one. Okay. Great. So we're not going to do this today because I don't think we have the time, but you can basically do the same exercise again for your weaknesses. You can basically list a couple of weaknesses and then evaluate it based on whether you have information or stories to support that that is your weakness, whether other people have confirmed that to be your weakness, and then finally, how wide of an impact does that weakness have? Is it kind of just impacting this one role you have, or is it impacting, your ability to be productive overall, right? So kind of understanding the scope of that. So you can do this absolutely with your weaknesses, but we're not going to do it today. And basically what we're trying to do is, again, like I mentioned, career growth is, as defined by us today, is closing the gap between what I want and what I'm good at. And what you just finished doing is having two ranked lists. One ranked list of your opportunities, when you walk away, giving your values, you're going to rank those opportunities. And then you also have a ranked list of your strength. And what you want to do is the intersection of those two things, basically the opportunities, the highest ranked opportunities that allow you to exercise your highest ranked skills, those are kind of the sweet spot. And those are the opportunities that you really want to pursue. And those are the next steps that are truly valuable to you and will be the ones that you have highest likelihood of success. And the reason why I say, again, that career growth is closing that gap, it's a continuous effort, is because, again, your skills can change, different opportunities pop up, so on and so forth. And so the exercise that you did today, you will have to do again and again and again. It'll probably become a little bit more natural to you, and you probably don't have to actually write down numbers and score them, but it's a great way to exercise that muscle of how to think about things. Next time you come to an opportunity, don't just think about whether you're a good fit for it, think about how it fits into your values. Kind of turn that scrutiny around the other way, right? We're always wondering how we look up to our employers, but maybe we should think about how those employers fit in our life. And then for your strengths, how can you be as objective about that as possible, right? Because I've always kind of gone through the early stages of my career, just assuming based on the job description what my strengths should be and how I should be upskilling myself. But you should be looking at your strengths as how they fit within those opportunities and how you can continue to grow in the opportunities given the existing strengths that you have. So this is a great way to basically just think about it in a more systematic way, other than just kind of mulling here, being, what do I do? I'm kind of good at this. I'm kind of good at that. I have this in front of you, so on and so forth. So hopefully, at least to me, I really like a bit of structure. And what that means in terms of next steps is, I'm sure you guys all know, but number one is obviously to hone your self-awareness. So balance both your internal and external. There's really no, one is not better than the other. Like your internal is not better than external is not better than internal. What you really want to do is achieve balance and kind of get into that aware quadrant. And you're going to do this by doing the self-reflection that we've done today, and then also checking it against feedback. For those strengths that you listed down that, well, actually this is number 3, but for those strengths that you listed down that didn't get a 2, how can you get it to a 2, right? There was a dimension of whether it's confirmed. If it's not a 2, maybe you should get some more explicit confirmation. If, if it's only scoped to a single industry, a single role, how can you broaden that scope to be a little bit more translatable and make you even more valuable in your market? So kind of do those things. And then I skipped 1 to 3, but number 2 is also to audit your opportunities. When you do have job offers coming in, or next time that your manager asks you what you want to do next, think about those opportunities in terms of your values. Again, I've given you very systematic ways of thinking about it. And so you're more than welcome to cement these very cerebral thoughts into numbers and get some comfort in that, and kind of use that as the starting point to evaluate those opportunities. So I hope that was helpful. All in all, that's a wrap. I really hope this was helpful. Please feel free to give me feedback on anything that was confusing or was not helpful, or I don't know, or parts you enjoyed. I am more than happy to iterate on this workshop. I would be super open to any questions that you guys have. Okay, I have one question here from Jen. What if the rankings are all similar, e.g. all 2s? So if they are all 2s, they should all be at the very, very top of that list, right? It's basically your biggest strengths, your most marketable strengths, your confirmed strengths, basically other people agree with you. So these are kind of the strengths that you want to carry with you into your next job opportunity, when in your next interview. When people ask you what is your biggest strength, likelihood is that you're giving that as your answer. And this is also going to be the outstanding strength for you to use when you're assessing opportunities. Will I get a chance to exercise this strength in that opportunity? If that opportunity is what you want because it aligns with your values and it gets to exercise that amazing strength you have, you basically have struck gold.
And then we also have another question. Do you do one-on-one coaching, Lily?
I do one-on-one mentoring. I don't do coaching. I feel like in my head, the difference between mentoring and coaching is usually like very structured and kind of, meant to have this very uh, um, measurable goal. Say, for example, I want to land that next job, and it kind of stops there. So I do more mentoring, which is basically being with that person for a very long time, regardless of whether they hit their goals or not. And I do mentoring, but I am at capacity. I think that the benefit of doing long term is being with that person for a long time and really see them through. But the con obviously is I can't take on very many. So unfortunately, I am at capacity, but this is a great way to plug ADP List, because ADP List does have hundreds and thousands of mentors that you can absolutely seek advice on. I see a question here from Jay Lee. What advice would you give for junior designers that have more things that they want other than their strengths? I would definitely recommend evaluating those skills. You can basically evaluate any skills, whether they're your strengths or your weaknesses, or they're neutral, based on those 3 criteria I just mentioned to you. Do you have any examples to show for it? do other people agree with you that you've shown, demonstrated that skill? And then how versatile is that skill? I think that the reason why I've always ordered them in that way is because you want to start with number one. If you don't have that skill yet, you probably want to come up with some examples and start showing that you are capable of demonstrating that skill. Number two is to start gaining visibility on that skill so that other people can see how you're doing and maybe they can agree with you that you're making progress. And then number three is once you maybe get really good at doing that skill in a very particular way, maybe think about how you can apply that skill outside of that, right? So as a designer, maybe for example, you're really good at mobile design and you have examples of great mobile design. People say you're really good at mobile design, but in order to open that scope, maybe you should learn about desktop or I don't know, any other types of design other than mobile so that you can flex those muscles in a bigger variety. Um, let's see. How do we use awareness of weaknesses? Oh, do we seek to avoid opportunities that display these? That's such a great question. Number one, how do we use awareness of weaknesses? So again, you're kind of assessing them on those three dimensions I mentioned. And what you're going to do is, number one and number two of those dimensions, whether you displayed it and other people agree with it, is kind of, the severity of that weakness. And then the number three is the scope, how much of your life does it affect? So once you kind of know how severe and how wide of an impact that weakness has on your life, then maybe you should start thinking about how relevant is it to what you want. So this is kind of leaking into the second question, which is, do we avoid opportunities that display those weaknesses? Again, using the same mobile design example, if your weakness is mobile design and the job is mobile designer, maybe the best thing is not to do that yet and really convert that from a weakness into a strength. However, if the job is, generic UX UI designer or product designer, and you're really bad at mobile design, see how important it is to the company and see if you can make some sort of workaround to it, right? So maybe they have a full team of mobile designers that address it. And so you don't necessarily have to be the person to go from 0 to 1. Maybe you can recycle other people's designs and use that as your workaround. So weaknesses to me is always, do you have to address it now in order to get what you want, or can you find a workaround? So it's always one of those two.
Well, thank you so much again, Lily. And thanks everyone for joining Creative Mornings today. Again, happy Friday, and hopefully we'll see you at another field trip. So thanks again and have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me.